and good evening, Ari. I'm Shreya, an English honors student. This interview is part of my academic project on Indian diaspora writing, where I'm exploring themes such as identity, migration, marginalization, and belonging in contemporary literature. Today, I'm honored to be in conversation with Ari Gautier, a French Tamil writer whose work moves across languages and cultures. His writing reflects the complex experiences of diaspora, memory, and social margins, contributing an important voice to contemporary Indian and global literary discussion. Thank you very much, sir, for taking the time to speak with me today. Um, shall we begin?
Yes, please go on.
So, before I dive into the questions related to diaspora, one of your book is titled The Tinai. So, I wanted to ask you, what made you choose this particular architectural element as a central metaphor in your novel?
It's a good question. First of all, thank you, Shreya, and for reaching out to me, and I'm really happy to be part of your project. Um, Actually, what happened is after I finished my first novel, Karne Sukha Lakshmi, uh, which Secret Diary of Lakshmi, Lakshmi's Secret Diary, sorry, in English, and it's mostly about an elephant who is begging and tripod dog Baba, who is a three-legged dog who pretend to be a guru, and a flying fish. And I was trying to, through that book, to tell about the pre-colonial, colonial, and post-colonial history of Pondicherry. And because it was through animals, choosing anthropomorphism to tell the story, and I didn't know how to get out from that animal narrative. And then again, also I said, okay, I wrote that book, and I remember I gave it was not even published. I gave a copy, a full photocopied copy to one of my childhood friend, Ganesh. I said, Machan, this is my first book. So he read the book. He said, oh, love that book. So what's your next project? I said, I'll write about Pondicherry again because I know there's a lot of materials there. I said, well, no, what else to write about Pondicherry? You already said everything in that book. And they said, no, that's not possible. There's so many things to tell about Pondicherry. And I cannot just limit myself with one book. And I want to continue to tell the story of Pondicherry. And I don't know what to do, which angle to, what story to tell. And at that time, I was in Nigeria, and I went to the bookshop and I picked a book from V.S. Naipaul called Migwell Street. So in Miguel Street, V.S. Naipaul it's a very um, small book, a novella, is tell the story of Trinidad or that particular area through the perspective of one street. That is the street he used to live. So I like that idea of telling the story of memories, migration, how as, because he's part of the indentured labor migration, his father moved to Trinidad as indentured labor. So he's telling the story of migration through that street called Miguel Street. And I like that idea. I said, okay, let me do something similar. And I want to tell the story of Pondicherry from area I used to live, which is a fisherman area. But then again, I cannot call it the street I was living is called Chinnatambi Street, Avoka Chinnatambi Street. I cannot call it Advocate Chinnatambi Street and then tell the book.
Mm,
And so I was thinking a creative way, a nice idea. And that idea of Thinai came because Thinai in that particular house was something very special, which I'll tell later. And so I said, okay, I'll write about the story of my family. My story is not really autobiographical, but there's some elements of
Elements. Yeah.
autobiography in that book. So I said, okay, let me start with the Tinai. But come back to that statement that my friend did, said, but you already talked about Pondicherry. What else are you going to write about Pondicherry? But that shows the kind of ignorance that the people of Pondicherry have their own on their own history, because they think, okay, the French came,
Mm.
they were there, and they left. End of the story. As if there's nothing else inside. So when you start to dig in the history of French presence in India, there's so much material out in the world that we don't know our own history. So for me, it was important not only to appropriate that history and also to understand and to tell the story through my perspective. So that's why I chose Ditinai.
I think when I first went through your works, I think it really stood out to me out of the three works that you had, because even I'm from Kerala, I'm also from South India, and we also have that
Where are you
veranda like
from?
I'm from
Where are
Kerala,
you from?
Kerala.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So we also have that veranda like structure where, conversations are always happening there. And like I felt that there is also a transitional area, after a long day, we come and relax there. So I think it really resonated with me. So before I dive into the questions, I really wanted to ask why you chose that specific element. So coming to the language aspect of diaspora, since um, when I read one of your novels, I saw that you use Tamil words and you write in French and you know English. You know so many languages. So, what role does language play in diasporic writing, like especially when a writer, moves across literary and cultural traditions?
You see, for as you know, French has a very uh, peculiar uh, space in literature because there's a kind of linguistic chauvinism. People only write in French, and most of the times, and 90% of French literature, I mean, which is normal, is written by white French authors. But when you take the history of colonization, right? So the African Francophone literature has started a long time back, much before, even before the colonization ended. They already started to write in French. Same thing if you go to Haiti, if you go to Indian Ocean. So the French writing through the what you call subaltern perspective has been always there. Uh, but in India, it's very strange. It's still we still don't understand why is that the French presence in India is almost like 285 years or something like that, right? And Pondicherry or the Tamil Nadu or Pondicherry, I would say, had a very strong literature tradition in Pondicherry, but in Tamil, right? So when the French people came and took over Tamil Pondicherry, suddenly kind of a disruption in that literary tradition. Even though there's a prolific Tamil writers, but they never managed to write in French. So we had French education from almost 1886, yeah, something like that. And people, there was a elite who went to French school, who studied French, and wrote some books. But most of the books are scientifical. They talks about medicine. They talk about laws. They talk about different aspects, but not as a novel because novel requires imagination. Science books need scientific approach, which is very technical, I would say. But novel needs imagination, and that's what I keep on saying, that French people managed to teach us how to think, how to reflect, but not didn't give us um, imaginary language. to write a novel, because I think there is a kind of dichotomy. You can think in French, but you cannot imagine in French, because imagination requires a totally different understanding of masterizing the language. So that is my logic, and that's my understanding, that's my opinion. I'm sure there must be some other explanation for that. So for me, it was important that I am one of the few, one of the first um, Tamil Pondicherry writers writing in French to um, to set up to set up a platform of literature which includes different languages which are my identity, right? Like, for example, being Tamil. And as Pondicherry has been cosmopolitan city for many, many years, people came from inside India itself, from Andhra, from Kerala, from different part of India. And then again, because of the colonization and the mobility that colonization has given, people moved to Africa, they moved to Indian Ocean, they moved to Caribbean, they moved to Vietnam. So different part of the world, and these words are coming back into the into the culture. So how do we create a new literary language? If you take, for example, the African Francophone literature, they write in French, but in African way.
Mm.
If you take the Indian Ocean, the same thing. They use Creole words. If you take the Maghreb, Algeria, Morocco, they have their own words, which is included. But in India, what we do, most of the people who wrote, or very few people, they write in French like Victor Hugo Maupassant. They hardly put in Tamil words inside. So for me, it was important to put these Tamil words, or whichever languages which are spoken in Pondicherry, which I grew up with.
I think it is really inspiring because as a budding writer myself, I've so far written in English, but I think when I come across books like yours, where there is a blending of languages, it inspires me to also blend other languages that I know in my writing. Um, Earlier, I used to not think it was a possibility because I didn't read such books where there was a blending of languages. But now, when I come across, as a literature student, when I come across books like yours, I think it really affects my writing too, where have started including words that are not English, but to gain autonomy over my own voice. So yes. So the next theme that I am touching on is rootlessness and alienation. These two experiences are very, I think, like it is described as central to migrant experience. So how does literature actually give, shape to such abstract feelings? Because often I find that writing such emotions can, lead into a negative perspective sometimes. So, how as a writer can we, give shape to it in a way where it is hopeful at the same time?
Yeah, you see, if you talk about that migration experience, right? And this is a topic about diaspora, migration, this and that. And when I wrote the my two first novels, uh, okay, you know that I was born in Madagascar from a Tamil father, a Malagasy mother, and then I moved to France. From France, I moved to Norway, and I'm writing this book, these two books from Nigeria. So the geographical space, when you move around, gives you the ability, the flexibility also to talk about emotion, right? Not to be emotionally connected to one particular place. And because it gives you take a little distance from the place you're writing, because I'm writing about Pondicherry, but I don't live in Pondicherry. I'm not there physically, but I'm somewhere else. So that geographical distance gives me not only a different approach of the subject, and not also again not emotionally attached, because that one thing I really hate is nostalgia. I like souvenirs, but nostalgia no, because nostalgia brings back to a time and to a time which is not existing anymore, and you're longing for that. And nostalgia has the tendency of creating that something is fixed. You see, it is there and it's not there anymore. So, but the idea, your mind is still there. Your mind is fixed in one particular time. I don't like that. I hate nostalgia. I prefer souvenir. Most of my books are souvenirs, not nostalgia. I talk about, okay, this house was small when I left, now was big, but when I came back, it looks small because I grew up. Physically, I grew up. So when I was a child, that house looked like a big. When I grow up, I come back, the house is small. But that is souvenir. That's not nostalgia. So that's why I keep on, I make sure that I don't fall in the trap of nostalgia, because nostalgia creates some kind of uh, sadness inside you, because you think, okay, I'm longing for a period of life that is not there anymore, and I'm trying to transcend that, if you can call that sadness, into something happiness and something joyful and something very humoristic, and that is to show that I'm always looking forward, not backward, and that helps a lot.
That's a very interesting take because often I've seen nostalgia being romanticized in certain perspectives. So
Absolutely,
I think,
absolutely.
yeah. So I think this is a very interesting way to, look, because I think nostalgia can also be very, like you said, it can put us in a fix when we are just mourning the past because it is not going to come back. So it's better, I think, to take control over it and do something about it in a positive manner. So coming to the last leg of the interview, I wanted to know, like, what challenges do you feel arises when you write, across cultures and audience? Like, do you keep something in mind, um, before writing?
Well, it depends what I write about, and no, I don't keep anything in mind, because when you start to think about your writing, you don't create anymore. Creation needs spontaneity, you know. And as I said, I'm a jazz. I write like a jazz partition. Uh, if I start to think, oh, I'm gonna write like this, I'm gonna write for these people, I'm gonna write according to this audience or this, no, I then I stop creating. I create there and then. What comes to my mind, I start. But of course, the structure, of course, I need to
Mm.
rewrite, reorganize thing. But the idea, the primary idea, I don't think about anything or anyone in particular. That idea comes to my mind, and then I work on that idea to make it a text and a book or short novel or a short story. So I think if you start to think about the target, the audience, your readership, you stop creating writing. And I mean, there are some people who might think, okay, this is the audience I'm targeting, this is the kind of readership, or this is the kind of academia I'm starting. But I don't. I just why write what comes to my mind, and people like it or not, and first of all, the writer writes for himself, as simple as that. It's nothing narcissistic, or nothing, but we write for ourselves first, and then when it reaches out people and they are emotionally attached to what you write, or they connect to the story that you're writing, that is a bonus.
That's very good advice. So my final question is, what advice would you give to students studying diaspora literature today? And do you have any recommendation for any book that you think is a must read?
I'm a very bad, very bad in giving advice because I never take advice myself. I I hate taking advice, and I'm not good at giving advice at the same time. But diaspora, then again, what is diaspora? Diasporic literature. You see, um, for example, if you take the in the Indian literary tradition after the independence, most of the English novels who came to the country were people who left India, who moved to
Indeed.
UK, US, this and that. They wrote their experience, and it came back to India in for the English readership, right? But after that, that was for what called the post-colonial literature, right? But that I think from the 80s onwards, Indians are writing so beautiful novels in different languages, vernacular languages. So we don't require anymore this diasporic literature, to be honest, because the amount of beautiful writers and literature which has been produced in India, it's amazing. So, I mean, of course, I mean, I'm a, if I can call it diasporic writer, I don't consider myself as a diasporic writer. You see, I'm just a writer. People can put you in different boxes. They say, okay, he's writing about diaspora. I'm writing about myself. I'm writing my experience. I'm writing about Pondicherry. That is what I want to write. And you can call me diasporic. That's your uh, the way you call me diasporic writer. But I don't write for diaspora. And I think at one point, to be honest, Thinnai was, as you can say, uh, on one of my reviewers said Tinna is a book of exile, is book of diaspora, and the entire Franco-Ponticheran community, which is a diasporic community, if you can call it like that. Then again, diaspora means a lot of things from
Yes.
from the what you call the Jewish diaspora, which has been
Yeah.
in exile for so many centuries. So the Franco-Ponticheran community, I became the darling of the Franco-Ponticheran community because I was giving them, again, for some people was nostalgia. I was giving them a Pondicherry which is from the 1970s, which is not there anymore, right? So for them, we said, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful. You're talking about Pondicherry from 1970s that we are longing." You see, I said, "My God, this is become a trap." Because I'm becoming not only a diasporic writer, I become a nostalgic writer. I don't
And
want to
you
be that.
hate, yeah.
I hate that. I don't want to be the person who is talking about the past as it was the golden past, right? 1970s, the golden past. Like me, I am 61. So most of my classmates were in the 70s. They were like 10, let's say 10, 12 years old. So that's the time you discover the world around you, right? And for them, it was the golden past of Pondicherry. So I became the darling of the Franco-Ponticheran community, and everybody read that book and said I was hailed like I'm one of very good writer from Pondicherry community. But then again, when I wrote Nocturne Pondicherry, which is totally different from Tinne, which is talk about the dark side of Pondicherry, about prostitution, drugs, alcoholism, homophobia, this and that, I became the villain. From one book to other, I became the villain. I was not representing the diaspora anymore. So what is diasporic writer? I don't know. And who called me diaspora? Diasporic writer? I don't know who calls me, but it's nice. But so that's why I'm saying, it's a, I don't think in that way I'm writing for this community. I want to please this one. I'm just writing what comes to my mind. Like, for example, if you can call me again diasporic writer, most of my work are focused on the indentured laborship, right? From on the Tinai, I'm talking about that, or even on Karnasuka Lakshmi, there is one portion of thing, and the new one I'm writing is called the Memory of Plantations, sugar cane plantations. It's about indentured labor, uh, diasporic community. But I don't belong to that diaspora. I have nothing to do with that story. I am none of my grandparents' parents who went and worked in the sugarcane plantation, be it in West Indies or Indian Ocean or Fiji or Trinidad. No, it just happened that I'm interested in in that history because that one side of history which is not taught or written in India. Amitav Ghosh has written beautiful books about intergenerational leadership. But other than that, there is no very popular books about that stories. So for me, it's important because I'm me coming from Pondicherry and places like Guadeloupe, places like Reunion Island, places like Guyana. Most of the people who went as laborers, they went from Pondicherry. So through Pondicherry, I'm talking that story. So it's just interconnected, but I have nothing to do with the story.
Thank you so much, sir, for speaking with
I
me
hope
today.
I answered all your questions the way you want.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your like all this conversation, has been such a great one, honestly. And like, I'm going to add this. It is valuable for my project. So thank you so much, sir,
So
for
it's
speaking.
interesting. It's interesting that you said you are from Kerala, and you talk about the Thinnai also in thing. In Thinnai, but in the French version, not this English version, I'm talking about the disappearance of the Theravada.
Okay.
I wrote a
Yes,
full
Tarawad. Hmm.
chap- chapter of how the Theravada is disappearing from the Kerala tradition.
Culture,
So
yes.
same like Thinnai, it's also a disappearing thing. But even architectures change, people habit change, the words will remain. Literature will keep the traces of
Yes.
these disappearing things. So thank you very much.